Hello and welcome to Buffy and the Art of Story Season 7, a podcast that recaps one episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer at a time, focusing on its story elements. Today, we're looking at Season 7, Episode 5, Selfless, where Anya returns to her demon life with a vengeance, and Buffy must fight against her. I am Lisa M. Lilly, author of the Awakening Supernatural Thriller series and the Q.C. Davis crime novels, as well as the Writing as a Second Career books for fiction writers. Along with the recap of Selfless, today I'll talk about the role of choice in story and the Buffyverse, flashbacks that tell a complete plot of their own and then converge with the present-day story, why a values conflict is the strongest type of conflict for any story, how to use conflict to entertain while revealing characters' depth, and how theme and major plot turns affect storytelling. As always, there will be no spoilers until I get to the foreshadowing section at the end, but I'll give you plenty of warning. Okay, let's dive into the Hellmouth. Selfless aired the first time on October 22nd, 2002. It was written by Drew Goddard and directed by David Solomon, and the DVDs have a commentary from both of them, and I'll share some highlights from that throughout this episode. We start with opening conflict, very minor, between Dawn and Willow. As they pack Willow's things, we find out that Willow is returning to college. Dawn tells her, "My advice to you is do exactly what everyone else does all the time." And Willow says, "Got it." Dawn continues, "Do what everyone else does, wear what everyone else wears, say what everyone else says." And Willow says, "Okay." Dawn continues, "People may say something to you you don't understand. Just don't be afraid to keep your mouth shut and pretend like you know what they're saying." Willow points out, "You know, Dawn, I've been to college before." But Dawn ignores that and says, "People may say something like, 'My protein window closes in an hour.' Just nod and smile. Turns out it has something to do with fitness." This is a great example of revealing exposition through entertaining conflict because we find out that Willow is going back to college. But the characters don't just talk about that or tell each other that. Instead, we get Dawn, who is trying to be helpful and feel a little bit grown up where she can give Willow advice. And Willow sort of humoring her, but reminding her that Willow is, in fact, the grown up. She's done this before. At the same time, there is underlying tension because Willow is nervous about returning, though probably not for the reasons that Dawn thinks. On the DVD, Drew Goddard commented that there was nothing else for Michelle Trachtenberg, who plays Dawn, to do in the episode, so he put her here in the beginning. This is a really nice way to bring in a character quickly that you know your viewers or readers want to see in an episode where they don't have a major role. This could have been any character here, but it is fun that it's Dawn. Now Xander and Buffy walk in. They're also helping Willow pack or move. It's not clear where she's moving. I thought college, but the Buffy fandom wiki says she is moving into her old room. And we'll see in later episodes where she's living. That is probably right. Xander tells Buffy he's thinking about calling Anya. He last saw her when they dealt with the Gnarl demon. Buffy's not terribly encouraging, so more conflict here. She doesn't want Xander to get his hopes up, and he says he has no hopes, that he and Anya are done. But he worries about Anya because she seems so sad. Dawn chimes in, she should try acting like everybody else more. And Willow comments, apparently it's what all the kids are doing nowadays. Buffy, though, gets less of a sad vibe and more of a vengeance vibe. Xander's not worried about that. He tells Buffy Anya just turned back to what she knew after and then he cuts off and doesn't say left her at the altar, just says, you know, but that's not her anymore. Buffy says she hopes he's right. Xander points out that Anya turned the worm guy back. More excellent use of conflict to bring out that exposition. A Real contrast to some previous episodes where characters just talked about stuff that the writers wanted to remind us of. There's a genuine reason for Xander to point this out. He is pushing back on Buffy, reminding her that Anya did take a step away from vengeance. This is also foreshadowing because it sets up that Anya will take back her last action as a vengeance demon. It also sets up some irony for the next scene because now Xander says he really thinks Anya's coming around. At 1 minute 45 seconds, the scene cuts to a fraternity house. Dead young men are all over. There's blood on the carpet, they're on the pool table, they're on couches, and their hearts have been ripped out. Anya sits on the floor against the wall, blood all over her, and says, "What have I done?" And we cut to credits. We could see that slaughter as the story spark for this episode. Overall, I think it is in terms of Anya's arc towards making a change. There's a later moment that might set off the specific action conflict here. On return from the credits, though, at 2 minutes 38 seconds, we get a flashback to 1880 in Sweden. Olaf enters as Anya, who is not yet a demon and whose name is Odd, cleans their home. There will be quite a few flashbacks in this episode. Put together, they tell their own complete story, which is the ideal way to use a flashback rather than bringing the present day story to a halt, showing us a flashback to fill us in on something, and then going back to the present day story. Here, there is a real story to tell. Otherwise, it's generally better to work in the exposition some other way. This scene is the conflict that begins the flashback story. Odd worries that Olaf is injured. He said he had a hard day fighting trolls, and he asks her about all the rabbits around the house. They make him think of breeding. But Anya tells him to drink his mead first, and she waits on him and says, "The rapid reproductive rate of our rabbits has given me an idea. I can give the excess out to the townspeople, exchanging them not for goods or services, but for goodwill and the sense of accomplishment that stems from selflessly giving of yourself to others." Olive laughs, "Ha ha ha, sweet Odd, your logic is insane and happenstance like that of a troll." A callback to insane troll logic in the episode Triangle, where we last saw Olaf when Willow and Anya accidentally brought him into the present, though it's Xander who says insane troll logic. Drew Goddard comments in a later scene that he had a lot of fun with the idea of Anya starting out as a communist. We'll see a bit more of that later. Olive tells her no wonder the bar matrons talk about her. You speak your mind and are annoying. But he goes on, it's what he loves about her. Anya, though, is more caught by the bar matron mention and asks if Renveg was there. He insists he has no interest in Renveg and goes on, her hips are large and load-bearing like a Baltic woman. Your hips are narrow like a Baltic woman from a slightly more arid region. Olive tells Anya she's his perfect Odd. She tells him she loves him so much she could burst at times. She couldn't live without him, and he says she'll always be his beautiful girl. At 5 minutes 54 seconds, we cut to the present day on Anya, who will always be his beautiful girl, now washing blood from her hands. This could be the story spark for the action plot that brings her ultimately into conflict with Buffy, because Anya misses a spot, which Willow will later see. Though eventually somebody would have noticed those dead frat boys, and perhaps Buffy would have put together that it was Anya. At 6 minutes 17 seconds, in the Sunnydale High basement, Spike confides to Buffy that he doesn't trust what he sees. He talks about how Drusilla used to see things, but some of it made her happy, and now he sees Drew. He also says he's in trouble. Buffy tells him she can help him. He tells her he couldn't ask, not after. And he cuts off, so a bit of echo of Xander not being able to say what he did to Anya. Spike doesn't say what he did to Buffy. She tells him he's different now and they'll get through this together. And then the real Buffy appears walking through the hall towards Spike. On the DVD, Drew Goddard said the only notes he got for this scene, or the only thing in the outline, was that it was a Buffy Spike scene, which is an interesting glimpse in the writing process. And he said he wrote this entirely alone because everyone else was off working on Firefly. He and the director told James to act sane when talking to the person who's not really there, but to act crazy when the real Buffy appears, which is such an interesting choice, and it conveys so much about how messed up Spike is and how the evil works. He feels better when he's talking to the not really Buffy. Now, the real Buffy says, Spike, this basement is killing you. This is the Hellmouth. There is something bad down here, possibly everything bad. And he laughs and says, can't hear you, can't hear you. She keeps urging him to get up and get out of the basement, and he says, I don't have anywhere else to go. At 8 minutes 21 seconds, Willow walks with the professor, spilling out all her reasons why she should be let back into class, and the professor says, of course, I noticed that drop-off in your grades at midterms last year, and I was concerned. And Willow says, yeah, that was, and the professor cuts her off and says, but then voila, you turned it around and aced all your finals, like boom, magic. Willow's clearly uncomfortable with that and says, yeah, similar to, but another person unable to say or not wanting to say exactly what they did. Here, Willow really can't fess up to magic. And her discomfort with this reference tells us so much about where Willow is at emotionally without Willow saying it. The fact that she won't say it, the things Xander won't say and Spike won't say, carry so much more weight than if we had them spilling out how terrible they feel about everything. For Willow, it also foreshadows her losing it in a few moments. Willow sees Anya exit the frat house wearing a trench coat. Willow gushes about how excited she is to be back at school, including getting periodic surprise quizzes to make up for the one she missed. Anya keeps glancing at the frat house, and Willow asks why is Anya there in the middle of the day. Anya claims she's seeing someone, quote, having lots and lots of sex, unquote. Willow notices the blood on Anya's wrist, and after Anya leaves, Willow goes in the frat house. She sees a big smear of blood on the wall and then blood smears on a set of double doors and goes in and sees the bodies. At 10 minutes 58 seconds, Willow hears a voice. She opens a closet door. A young woman is crouched inside, whimpering and sobbing and saying, I take it back, over and over. More foreshadowing of what Anya will say later. The girl tells Willow about her boyfriend who broke up with her in front of all his frat boy friends. He invited her to a party, but it was just her and them, and it was all a game, and they laughed at her, and she cried and yelled she wished they could feel what it's like to have, quote, their hearts ripped out just once, end quote. Then a giant spider thing appeared and ripped all their hearts out. Willow stands and asks where it went. We're now at the 1/4 twist that usually comes around a quarter through any story. It should come from outside the protagonist, spin the story in a new direction, and raise the stakes. Whoever we see the protagonist as, whether it's Willow or Buffy here, it is from outside of them. Because at 12 minutes, 18 seconds, we see this giant spider crawl up the wall behind Willow as she reassures the young woman that she's safe and asks where it is. And the young woman points, and we cut to a commercial, a great cliffhanger. More insights on the writing process from the DVD commentary. Drew Goddard said that this episode came about during a dinner that he had with Joss Whedon. They knew it was going to be about Anya, and they were kicking around the plot ideas. And every time Drew Goddard got up and left to use the restroom and came back, Joss would have another act break worked out. Drew had to figure out how and why to get from one to the other. So, for instance, the beginning was Anya in the middle of bodies, Willow attacked by a giant spider. A lot of times that is how I write, which probably doesn't surprise anyone given this whole podcast. I'll have an idea for an opening or maybe the midpoint, one of those really big turns. And then from there, I kick around, well, why would the characters do this? Why are they there? What if this happened? What if that happened? And work from one to the other, either forwards to get to the end or sometimes backwards from that big turn or that first turn. Okay, why does that matter? How did we get there? The spider attacks. Willow holds it off magically. She creates a sort of shield against it, and the young woman is crying, and Willow's eyes go black. This is taking a lot of effort, and she turns her head and glares at the girl and says, "For God's sake, shut your whimpering mouth." She magically tosses the spider demon out the window. Her eyes go back to normal, and she apologizes to the girl and comforts her. She's not Dark Willow anymore, but it was there for a second. At 12 minutes 59 seconds, we return to 1880. Olaf is running from a mob that's trying to kill him. He's now giant. And he's a troll and keeps telling them he's Olaf. And the villagers are yelling back, "It's the largest troll I've ever seen." And one says, "Run, hide your babies and your beadwork." And when he says, "Stop, stop, it is Olaf," another villager says, "The troll is doing an Olaf impersonation," which is my favorite of all the lines. They are throwing things at Olaf. Anya is watching all of this with a look of satisfaction on her face. On the DVD, Goddard commented that this whole episode is about a girl trying to be what other people want her to be. And he said, when you have a clear theme, it makes everything easier to write. And here, every scene, even the troll nonsense, as he called it, fits because it's about how she meets D'Hoffryn, how she keeps being what other people want her to be, which that first scene with Olaf, she's trying to be what Olaf wants. And I love that comment too, because it fits with my view of flashbacks and how they should be integrated into the story, have their own story. And here he's saying fit with the theme. D'Hoffryn appears and approaches Anya. He is very impressed. He asks the details about the spell, and he thinks it's brilliant. She tells him she's odd, but he tells her she doesn't see her true self. She is Anyanka. And he adds that he's a patron of a family of vengeance demons. He's a little surprised she's never heard of them, but she tells him don't feel bad and goes on, "I don't talk to people much. I mean, I talk to them, but they don't talk to me, except to say that your questions are irksome, and perhaps you should take your furs and your literal interpretations to the other side of the river." D'Hoffryn says Anyanka is who she really is. He wants her to join his family of vengeance demons. So we really see that theme Drew Goddard talked about. He is telling her she doesn't know herself, and he's going to tell her who she is. And right now, this appeals to her because it does fit what she's feeling. Perhaps not who she is, but where her feelings are right now. And Odd says, "What would I have to do?" D'Hoffryn responds, "What you do best. Help wronged women punish evil men." And Odd says, "Vengeance." D'Hoffryn responds, "But only to those who deserve it." Odd says they all deserve it. And D'Hoffryn responds, "That's where I was going with that, yeah." And she agrees. Thank you to everyone who rated or reviewed the podcast. Each rating makes it more likely that other Buffy fans will find out about it. I've also got a comment to share from friend of the show, Roberta Lipp, about same time, same place. I talked about, well, why is Willow in Buffy's old room, sitting on a twin bed? And Roberta says, makes sense that Buffy took over Willow and Tara's room because it was her mother's. Logically, you are probably right that the double bed went to Dawn, but symbolically, it's Willow being demoted, feeling diminished. The reason the episode needs so much filler is because there's there's not really a plot, just a cool idea. You need more than a gimmick. A couple thoughts on that before I share more of Roberta's comments. I love the idea of the twin bed being a demotion because when I was growing up, kids all had twin beds. I didn't know anybody who had a double unless maybe their room doubled as the guest room when people came to visit. But otherwise, you had a twin bed. You didn't have a double bed. The double bed was for grown-ups, and maybe when you moved out you got that, but you had a twin bed. So it is, I think, symbolic that Willow's sitting on that twin bed, which I'm pretty sure we never see again, which further supports Roberta's idea. And her comment on the gimmick is fascinating given Drew Goddard's comment about theme, and it made me think, okay, is there a difference between a gimmick and a theme? The theme in Same Time, Same Place is the disconnection and loneliness from Willow and from the friends, but mainly for Willow. The gimmick is there's this spell that Willow can't see them and they can't see her. I'd be super curious to see what Drew Goddard might have done. I'm pretty sure he wasn't the writer on that, with that episode, with that theme. Roberta also comments, I'm still not sure what it is that doesn't work about that monster. You're not wrong. It is more gruesome than normal, and maybe that's why they made him sort of silly to temper the terror. And then maybe they explained this, but it seems like he targeted lonely people, which made you think that he isolated Willow from the rest, but then he didn't, but then he still targeted her. It's muddled. Another good point. I do think that was implied there now that Roberta mentioned it, because we first see Gnarl saying to this guy who's spray painting this wall at a construction site alone at night, and Gnarl says, all alone. And he taunts Willow with that over and over, but it's true, it is a bit muddled because everybody joins her, and on the one hand, okay, maybe that's how Gnarl's defeated because they're together, but it's not like Willow's able to help them defeat Gnarl. And his attacking Dawn, that doesn't really fit with that going for lonely people, though he didn't pick Dawn. Dawn, Buffy, and Xander came to him. Thanks so much, Roberta, for all your comments. It always gives me more things to think about when I'm looking at the episodes. At school, Buffy sits in a cubicle, balancing a cup of pencils on her forehead. Her head is thrown all the way back as she does this. Willow calls, and Buffy writes notes as they talk about the spider demon and tells Willow she'll go with Xander. So apparently Willow has said she can't join Buffy. And then Buffy says, ripped out the heart, my God. Hey, did you get that physics class you wanted? Nice use of that quick tone shift. At 16 minutes, 10 seconds, at Anya's apartment, Halfrick gushes over Anya's return to real vengeance, tells her everyone is talking about it. They might be planning a celebration. And Anya has really mixed feelings. She forgot how much damage that type of demon could do. Anya is upset, and it takes a moment for Halfrick to realize it, because at first she says, oh, yes, it's fantastic, but then asks Anya what's wrong, and Anya says there was so much blood. She guesses she's a little rusty. She didn't think it would hit her like this, and Halfrick reassures Anya it's normal. It's a reflex. She'll get over it, and Anya is so grateful for Hallie's support. If you set aside the context of it's about slaughtering people, Hallie is such a good friend to Anya here. She is the only one who has been giving Anya true emotional support this season and the end of last season as well, and who really cares for her. And it's so much like a workplace. Oh, I know you've been out for a while. You'll get used to it. You'll be happy to be back, and reassuring her her feelings are normal and will pass. But Willow interrupts and tells Hallie to get out. Hallie is pretty angry about that, but Anya tells her it's okay. Hallie does her trademark little arm flourish and disappears. That scene is perfect for setting up maximum heartbreak the next time we see Hallie. Willow now tells Anya she has to stop this, And Anya asks, does Willow know what those frat boys did to the young woman, how they laughed at her? Willow doesn't let herself get distracted. She says Anya's in trouble and Willow wants to help. Anya finds it ironic and asks if Willow flayed anyone lately. I love the two of them together, and more great bringing out of exposition. This is not just the minor conflict we had between Dawn and Willow in the beginning that was more in fun. This is where we start seeing that genuine values conflict. Willow's value now is to protect human life and to protect Anya because she knows Buffy is going to have to fight Anya. Anya's conflicted over her own values. She's expressing to Willow the value of, I am a vengeance demon, which she's going to say, this is what I am, this value of identity, who I am, what I do, what matters to me. But she showed in her conversation with Hallie and her early What Have I Done that she is starting to identify with different values. Maybe starting is the wrong word to go back to, because she did help the Scooby Gang at first, probably more for something to do or just because she wanted to be with Xander, that thing of being with someone and trying to be who they want. But it seems to have become an internal value for her as well. If not to help people, at least not to eviscerate them. So the conversation with Willow is the outer expression of Anya's internal conflict. Once again, so much stronger than having Anya just spill out all her conflict. A values conflict is so strong because it's genuine and it is not something that is easily resolved. The scene ends with Anya both angry and disturbed at her own behavior, all of which comes out through Emma Caulfield's performance, insists that those frat boys got what they deserved and she's a vengeance demon. At 18 minutes 27 seconds, Buffy and Xander hunt in the forest for the spider demon. Buffy comments that Willow had to go pretty quickly and didn't fill in too many details. They find a body with the heart ripped out lying under some trees, and Buffy says, this is the guy. And Xander says, or a copycat spider demon, which I thought was pretty fun. Something is rustling up in the trees, and the demon drops down, attacks, and nearly kills Buffy. She throws it off at the last minute, and it skitters back up into the treetops. Xander thinks they need to go back and get more weapons, but as he talks, and Buffy agrees with him, but she keeps staring up at those treetops and she hurls an axe straight up into it and kills the demon. We're now reaching the midpoint of the episode. We're almost there. It's 20 minutes, 8 seconds. Buffy and Xander enter the Summers house. As Buffy says, she's more concerned about where the demon came from. Willow sits waiting on a chair, looking very serious, and says, I know where it came from. The scene cuts to Buffy asking Willow how many, and Willow says 10 or 12. This cut to slightly shift the scene forward in time, and we know this because the characters are in somewhat different positions in the living room, is an excellent way to avoid Willow just telling Buffy and Xander everything that we already saw. And going back to Roberta's comment and mine previously about the gnarled demon, just for whatever reason not quite working, that is another contrast between the episodes, because this spider demon is not a terribly interesting demon, right? We only see it for maybe a minute or two in the whole episode. It is very dangerous. We see the results of it ripping out hearts. But the episode is not really about the demon. It is about Anya's internal conflict as expressed between what Buffy must do, another values conflict, and what Anya is struggling with, who she is, what she will do. So it doesn't matter that the spider demon is not super interesting. Buffy just kills it pretty fast, and that works fine. Xander is angry at Willow that she didn't tell them before that Anya conjured this demon. How could she not have said that? Buffy tells him it's okay. And now we're at that commitment and reversal for Buffy, because at 21 minutes 4 seconds, Buffy goes on, she didn't tell us because she knows what I have to do. I have to kill Anya. And we cut to a commercial. In the action plot, this is a huge reversal for Buffy to have to kill Anya, who she has become friends with, who Xander cares so much about. And it's a commitment because she's saying, yeah, I'm going to do this. And she means it, as we will see. We come back and there's a flashback to 1905 St. Petersburg. Hallie and Anya sit at a long banquet table. Everyone else is dead. They are wearing expensive, beautiful dresses. Anya has elbow-length gloves with blood on the hands of the gloves. Hallie admires Anya's work. And Anya says it's not her. It was all inside the girl, gesturing to this table of slaughtered men, and Anya just brought it out. And Hallie smiles, looks around, and says, yes, she's sure this is what the girl had in mind. A guy on fire, screaming, runs through. Anya and Hallie completely ignore him as they talk about what to do later. Anya suggests somewhere else to find scorned women. Halford comments on Anya being all work. Isn't she even interested in the revolution going on out there that Anya partly helped start? I guess I should be saying Anyanka. Anyanka says, well, what is there to be interested in? The workers will overthrow absolutism and lead the proletariat to a victorious communist revolution, resulting in a socioeconomic paradise on Earth. It's common sense, really. I have better things to worry about. On the DVD, Drew comments on his original idea was that this scene would be in the Renaissance, but they couldn't do it because it doesn't fit with the timeline of Hallie meeting Spike when he was still William in Fool for Love. That's why he moved the scene to the Russian Revolution, which gave him the idea about Anya starting out as a communist. A great example of how limitations can prompt creativity. Halford says there's a whole world out there. What about the rest of life? And Anyanka says, vengeance is what I do, Halford. I don't need anything else. Vengeance is what I am. I see this as the halfway mark of the flashback story. We had the impetus of it, the story spark with Olaf and Anya's suspicions or odd suspicions about him cheating. Then there was the turn where de Hoffren from outside of Odd asks her to become a vengeance demon. Now she has this major commitment. She is saying what de Hoffren told her, but she's making it hers. Vengeance is what I am. The scene cuts to the present day, and Buffy says to Xander, she's not the Anya that you knew, Xander, she's a demon. He says that doesn't mean Buffy has to kill Anya. There are other options. Buffy looks down and says, I've considered them. And Xander says, when? Just now? Took you all of 10 seconds to decide to kill one of your best friends? And Buffy very quietly says, the thought that it might come to this has occurred to me before. It's occurred to you too. Xander argues that they can change what Anya did. These are mystical deaths. And he looks to Willow, who tells him she doesn't have that kind of power and doesn't trust the power she does have. Buffy tells her it's okay. Now she and Xander will have a very major values conflict. On the DVD, Drew Goddard said he struggled with how to justify Buffy's saying she has to kill Anya. And he realized she killed Angel, that we can't doubt her motives, that they are genuine. And he noted that Joss Whedon's approach to story is to give people strong points of view, then have them in conflict with one another, which is what I'm looking at as conflicting values, because Xander's value here is love and loyalty. And we saw that with Willow last season. He loved Willow. He was loyal to Willow. And at the end, yes, he tried to talk her out of ending the world, but he genuinely was going to stay there with her if she did it, and was going to let her kill him if that's what it took to be there for her or to stop this. But primarily he was there for Willow. Buffy's values are to protect humans, not only humans she loves and cares about, but all humans, including ones who might be pretty awful people. There's no universe where Buffy is going to say that it's okay for these frat boys to have their hearts ripped out. But as we saw last season, she was not okay with Willow killing Jonathan and Andrew. She was maybe okay with Warren. She was more concerned with what it would do to Willow, but her value was still to protect humans from Willow and to protect Willow from going over the edge more than she already had. But it is to protect people. And Buffy has always taken human life really seriously, and that creates a huge conflict here because she sees this as the only way to protect from Anya. And she must have thought about it. They knew Anya was back in the vengeance world, and Buffy just had not come face to face with it other than the one wish they got Anya to reverse. Buffy tells Xander she knows it's hard for him to hear, but it's what she has to do. And he says, Buffy, you want to kill Anya? And Buffy says, I don't want to. And he tells her, then don't. This isn't new ground for us. When our friends go all crazy and start killing people, we help them. And Willow says, sitting right here, Buffy tells him it's different, and he says, sure, it's different because Buffy doesn't care about Anya the same way he does, and he says he still loves Anya. And Buffy responds, I know, and that's why you can't see this for what it really is. Willow was different. She's a human. Anya's a demon. And now we're going to get to the choice aspect. Choice is always powerful in story. When characters are just pushed about by outside forces, that's nowhere near as engaging as when they need to make a choice. That reveals much more of who a character is and what their values are. And Xander says to Buffy, and you're the Slayer, I see now how it's all very simple. Buffy tells him it's never simple. And he says, no, of course not. You know, if there's a mass murdering demon that you're, say, boning, then it's a gray area. Buffy says Spike was harmless. He was helping. And Xander says he had no choice, referring to the chip, which I think is not accurate. I know why he's saying that, but Spike didn't have to join with Buffy and her friends. He could have beat up on demons himself if he wanted to. He could have done what Drew tried to get him to do, teamed up with some other vampires or demons who would kill and let him feed on humans. He did make a choice. But this is a great segue into both Anya's choices and into Angel, because it's natural Buffy is going to think about Angel. Buffy now points out, and Anya did. She chose to become a demon twice. And that is a huge point to make. Willow, yes, she embraced dark magic, but initially she embraced magic to help people, and she kept going down this path. Anya made a clear choice to do a spell to hurt Olaf and then to entirely go down that path, and then she chose it again. Xander, though, says, you think we haven't seen all this before, the part where you cut us all out. Just step away from everything human and act like you're the law. If you knew what I felt. And at 24 minutes, 54 seconds, Buffy says, I killed Angel. And they're all silent for a moment, all three of them, and look at each other. And she says, do you even remember that? I would have given up everything I had to be with. I loved him more than I will ever love anything in this life. And I put a sword through his heart because I had to. And Willow says, and that all worked out okay. A little bit of foreshadowing there, since Buffy is going to put that sword through Anya, and it sort of will work out. But Buffy says to Xander first, and then both of them, do you remember cheering me on? Both of you. Do you remember giving me Willow's message, kick his ass? And Willow is really upset here. She says, I never said that. And Xander says, this is different. And Buffy says, it is always different. It's always complicated. And at some point, someone has to draw the line. And that is always going to be me. You get down on me for cutting myself off. But in the end, the Slayer is always cut off. There's no mystical guidebook, no all-knowing counsel. Human rules don't apply. There's only me. And she looks devastated as she says this and finishes, I am the law. Xander says there has to be another way, and Buffy tells him, please find it. And I'll have more thoughts on that speech from Buffy in the foreshadowing section. Xander grabs his jacket and leaves. Buffy takes out her weapons and looks at Willow, but Willow says she can't and apologizes. She looks stricken, but as soon as Buffy is gone, she rushes to search her drawers for D'Hoffryn's talisman. Nice callback to Something Blue, where D'Hoffryn gave it to her and told her to call him because he wanted her to be a vengeance demon. Another great example of building on previous episodes, which has been done throughout this one, but trusting the viewer to remember and put it together, and writing it well enough that if you didn't see that episode, you get what's going on nonetheless. On the DVD, Drew Goddard said he loves the dense mythology of the show, but he commented that the syndication people disagree. So this was back, the DVD commentary was done not that long after Buffy ended, and shows in syndication would probably still do on some of the networks. They would replay TV shows, and they preferred shows that were self-contained episodes because you could run them in any order. Usually they do run them in order, but people can drop in and out easily. So they didn't like these overarching season storylines. And the director is kind of reassuring, David Solomon is kind of reassuring Drew Goddard and is like, oh, come on. He says the show will be on in 40 years. And he's joking, which I find hilarious because it's been over 20 years now. But of course, they didn't foresee streaming services and the way people would be able to so easily access older shows that still resonate on demand. If you'd like to get more Buffy and the Art of Story content and support the podcast, you can do that at patreon.com/Lisa M. Lilly. That's Lisa, M as in Marie, Lilly. There are bonus episodes there for every season. One of my favorites from a few seasons back asks the question, is Riley a boyfriend bot? This season so far includes an episode about Lessons, the DVD commentary by Joss Whedon on it, and some related thoughts, and one about why Willow is the most consistent character in the Buffyverse. You can get all of that and early access to the episodes at $1 a month, but at the $5 level, you'll also get the Buffy and the Art of Story Season 1 book and access to all the modules in my How to Plot Your Novel course. Willow finishes her spell. There's flashing light, and D'Hoffryn appears, and he says in this booming voice, "Behold, D'Hoffryn, Lord of Arashmahar, he that turns air to blood and rains." And then he cuts off as he sees Willow and says, "Miss Rosenberg, how lovely to see you again. Have you done something with your hair?" And then he says he figured he'd be hearing from her soon, and goes on, "The flaying of Warren Mears. Oh, truly inspired. That was water cooler vengeance. Lloyd has a sketch of it on his wall." This character is so much fun and so funny, and Drew Goddard attributed a lot of it to the actor, Andy Umberger, who he said was so good and always got the jokes Drew Goddard wrote, like the thing about Lloyd. He said some actors would have asked him, like, well, who's this Lloyd? What's that about? But Andy Umberger was always like, sure, it's somebody who works in the Vengeance Demon family. And he drew a picture. Willow claims that is not her anymore, but D'Hoffryn is skeptical. Didn't he feel her presence earlier that day? But Willow says they need to talk about Anya. A little bit of warning there from D'Hoffryn. It tells us that Willow's fears about the power she has and using it have some basis because he senses that is still there for her. At 28 minutes, Anya is at the frat house. She traces one of the big blood stains with her finger as Xander enters. He tells her he wants to help her. Lots of references to help in this episode. I don't know if it's deliberate since the last episode was entitled Help. Anya says sarcastically, "Everyone is so considerate these days. I should have slaughtered people weeks ago." Xander says, I'm sorry for everything I did to you, everything I put you through." And Anya says, "Thank you, all better. Thank goodness you got here in time." But he tells her she doesn't understand. He's not trying to do an intervention. And he goes on, "Buffy's coming to kill you." Anya says she's coming to try. And Xander says, "Did everybody take their crazy flakes today? You guys are friends. How could you talk like this?" But Anya tells him she has a job to do, and so does Buffy. And she says Xander's always seen what he wanted to, but Anya knew sooner or later it would come to this. I found this reference to Xander seeing what he wants interesting. Buffy said it earlier, Anya says it, and now DeHoffrin's going to say something similar. I am not sure that is supported in the show, but it seems to be something that the writers want to come out in this episode. At 28 minutes 59 seconds, Buffy enters carrying a sword. Anya goes into her demon face, and when Xander won't get out of the way, she slugs him, and he flies across the room. Anya knocks Buffy across the room too. Buffy recovers and goes after her with the sword. Anya seems pretty close to getting the upper hand, but Buffy gets in a lot of punches too. And at one point, she is on the floor again, but she stands up and advances toward Anya with the sword and says, "Anya, I'm sorry." And Anya says, "You're apologizing to me? What fight are you watching? Or is this one of your little pop culture references I don't get? Because I'm a vengeance." And she is cut off because Buffy stabs her through the chest and pins her to the wall, and we go to a commercial. That's at 30 minutes, 12 seconds. And on return, we are in a 2001 Sunnydale flashback to the time of the musical episode. On the DVD, Goddard commented that this was the act break, and it was thematically the death of Anya as a vengeance demon. That's why Buffy stabs her right after she says vengeance and before she says demon. He also noted that each act starts with key moments of Anya's past, and this is the one from the musical episode, and it shows that she is still defining herself through Xander. It was his idea to call back to what he called a banner episode, and then he thought of the musical. Initially, Joss Whedon said no way could he do it. He was working on 3 shows at the time, and he couldn't write another song. Drew Goddard said, "Okay, I'll come up with some other scene." And the next morning, Whedon came to Drew Goddard's office and said he wrote the song. And I find this just one of the most moving moments in this episode during this song. And these scenes are where the flashback story and the present day story converge. Xander is dozing on a recliner. Anya tries to wake him up with no luck. She's asking him if the singing earlier was weird, but he just drifts off again. Outside, people are singing about mustard on a shirt and dry cleaning, which was a background song in the musical. Anya shuts the window, and then she starts singing Mr. Xander Harris and goes on about how she's just lately Anya and marrying him and taking his name. But some of her refrains are, "But who am I?" And I reply, and she sings about being his missus, and also says, "So maybe love is pretty smart and they'll never part, and how wonderful Xander is." And there's a rhyme in there where she says it makes financial sense as well. And at 33 minutes 35 seconds, she sings "Just Stand Aside, Here Comes the Bride," and bursts onto the balcony, and now she's in her wedding dress. That moment always makes me cry because she is so happy. It's more moving to me than the wedding episode was because we know it's going to happen. And as she sings, "I will be," and hits this high note on B, it cuts to silence, and we're back in the present. Anya is against the wall with that sword in, and one tear is running down her face. Xander wakes up. He was unconscious on the floor. He sees, he calls her name, and Anya gasps and says she forgot how much swords through the chest hurt, and she yanks it out with a screech. Anya waking up is the 3/4 turn of the episode, it grows from Buffy's midpoint commitment to kill Anya, but it takes the story in a new direction and raises the stakes because we are reminded how powerful Anya, or Anyanka, is. She tells Buffy that she should know better than that. A sword won't kill a vengeance demon. This is a callback to the episode in season 6, Buffy's birthday episode, where they stab Hallie and it makes no difference. And it is a nice reference to Hallie again, reminding us of her. On the DVD, Drew Goddard said he felt like it was sort of a cheating act break. The act break was when Anya gets stabbed because it didn't really kill her. And he said he always hated that, where big dramatic, somebody gets killed, and oh, you come back, and not really. But he said it was so good thematically that he did it. There was the cut on Vengeance, death of Anya as a vengeance demon with that stabbing, and now the I will be, before she says his missus again, we cut back to her stabbed, and he said that is the old Anya truly dying. So first the vengeance demon, then the old Anya. Buffy tells Anya she's just getting started. Anya has the sword and she lunges at Buffy. Buffy kicks her. Anya falls back on the floor. She's on her back. Buffy jumps up on an end table. She raises the sword over her head. I did not notice this because it's very fast, but on the DVD, Drew Goddard or maybe David Solomon said Anya doesn't move when Buffy stands over her with that sword, and it shows she's ready to die. Xander dives at Buffy and knocks her away, and Anya tells her to stop trying to save her. The first time I watched this episode, I thought this fight between Buffy and Anya was the climax, that last major plot point that resolves the main conflict between the protagonist and antagonist. But instead, a little bit like Help, we get a surprise ending because there are bright flashing lights. D'Hoffryn appears and tells them, don't mind him, continue. And he looks into that room where the frat boys are and says, oh, breathtaking. It's like somebody slaughtered an Abercrombie and Fitch catalog. Buffy stands, gripping her sword. She's going to go after D'Hoffryn, but he warns her that he'll be gone before she can swing and adds, isn't that just like a slayer, solving all her problems by sticking things with sharp objects? And I love that D'Hoffryn, with humor, is observing something about slayers. It's kind of that when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and gives a little support to Xander's point that maybe the only answer isn't killing Anya. Buffy has considered other options, but because of her mindset as a slayer, might not be as creative about it as someone else, or as we'll find out, Willow. D'Hoffryn turns to Anya and says, I talked to your friend Ms. Rosenberg. She's a firebrand. I have high hopes for her. More warning about Willow, and Xander says, stay away from Willow. D'Hoffryn says, ooh, he's gallant, isn't he? I understand what you saw in him. I always wonder if he's being sarcastic. D'Hoffryn says Ms. Rosenberg seems to think that Anya would be better off outside the Vengeance fold, and he looks at Buffy and says, I think we already know what Lady Hacksaway wants. And he adds that Xander sees through the eyeballs of love. So that's our third reference to Xander seeing. But at 35 minutes 55 seconds, D'Hoffryn asks them if anyone bothered to find out what Anyanka wanted. Xander tells him her name is Anya, and D'Hoffryn tells him there's a funny historical sidebar. She was originally named, but Anya interrupts him. And we are somewhere in here at the climax, which leads me to see the main plot as being Anya versus D'Hoffryn, with D'Hoffryn standing in for Anya's internal conflict over who she is. But I think that is the main plot, and Buffy versus Anya is a subplot, an important one, but a subplot. Both are going to resolve here because this will avoid Buffy needing to do anything more. Anya says to D'Hoffryn, I want to take it back. D'Hoffryn points out there are 12 bodies in there, and she knows how it works. To restore the balance, if they're brought back The fates require a sacrifice, quote, the life and soul of a vengeance demon, end quote, and Anya tells him to do it. Xander tries to intervene. She tells him he can't help her, and she's not sure there's a, quote, me to help, end quote. She tells de Hoffryn she understands, and he says, you're sure this is your wish? And there is just a ton of irony here because Anya should have known wishes never work how you think, but it's believable that she doesn't think of that because she knows how extreme it is what she's asking him to do. Anya says she's sure. She tells him to undo what she did, and he says very well and claps his hands. We might think this is the resolution. Xander yells, but no, there's a clap of thunder and flashing lights, and at 37 minutes 43 seconds, Hallie appears, and she's smiling, and she looks happy when she sees Anya, and she says, Anya. Anya gasps, and Hallie's head goes, she looks straight up, and light shoots out of her eyes. She screams and goes up in flames. And that is how the conflict resolves. Did Anya win or lose? Did Buffy win or lose? If they won by Anya surviving, it is the definition of a Pyrrhic victory where the protagonist prevails, but at this almost unbearable cost. Drew Goddard thought that that was also true. He didn't use the word Pyrrhic victory, but was true for de Hoffryn as well. He says that while de Hoffryn would never admit it, Goddard thinks de Hoffryn's heart breaks when Anya says she wants to take it back. She was his favorite, and he is so disappointed. That's why, or at least part of why he doesn't kill her, in addition to what he'll say in a moment. Anya asks him why he did that to Hallie, and he says, because you wished it. And she is still shocked. She says, but she was yours. And he points out that Anya was his too, and asks, hasn't he taught Anya anything? You never go for the kill when you can go for the pain. A wonderful example of bringing the characters' motives out through conflict. De Hoffryn isn't just saying to the room, hey, let me tell you why I did this. There's genuine conflict here between him and Anya. Anya says he should have killed her. De Hoffryn tells her not to worry about that. From beneath you, it devours. And he tells her to be patient, quote, all good things in time, end quote. On the DVD, Drew Goddard said, for those playing along at home, we get this line again, the from beneath you line, and said he got so tired of it. And of course, I love that comment because I have made no secret of my not being a fan of that line. Anya walks out. Buffy tells Xander to go ahead. She'll check on the frat boys. So he follows her. It's nighttime. Anya says, Xander, please just go away. Xander tells her whatever's between us, it doesn't matter. You shouldn't be alone in this. But Anya tells him she should and says her whole life she's just clung to whatever came along. And Xander says, well, speaking as a clingy, I kind of didn't mind. Anya says thanks for everything. Xander sees she wants to be alone. He starts to leave, but she calls after him and says, Xander, what if I'm really nobody? Xander says, don't be a dope. And Anya says, I'm a dope. Xander responds, sometimes. And he turns and leaves, and Anya says, that's a start. And she walks off alone, takes a deep breath, and steps from darkness into some light from a street light. And that is the end of the episode. Drew Goddard said that when Xander walks away after saying sometimes, that's when he realizes it's really over, that Anya really is not the same person. I never really got that from the episode. I think now that he said it, that makes sense. And there is a subplot here for Xander emotionally recognizing that Anya is not the same person, whether he loves her or not. I still don't get the I'm a dope line. I wish Goddard had talked about that. And I would love to hear it if any of you have thoughts on that. It felt kind of flat to me, and it felt a little bit like she's letting Xander tell her who she is again, and I'm sure that wasn't the intent given the rest of the episode and everything Drew Goddard said. So possibly, like Anya, I am being far too literal. that is it for the episode, other than foreshadowing. If you're not sticking around for that, because that does include spoilers, thank you so much for listening, and a special thank you to the patrons who support the podcast. I hope you'll come back in 2 weeks for Season 7, Episode 6, Him, where Dawn falls in love, and it appears Buffy does too, with the same vapid football player. I will start with the most heartbreaking foreshadowing when Anya says D'Hoffryn should have killed her, and D'Hoffryn tells her not to worry about that. All good things in time foreshadows Anya being killed at the end of the season. I never caught that before, probably because I was distracted by the "from beneath you it devours" line and always saw it more as foreshadowing of big evil to come. But this tells us Anya will die. Maybe another reason why D'Hoffryn doesn't feel the need to kill her. Buffy's speech about how it's always different and complicated, someone has to draw the line, it's always her, foreshadows that the end of the season is going to change that. Buffy will have to make some big decisions at the end, and she's going to struggle with all the ones she makes in between that affect all the potentials, not to mention the rest of the world. But ultimately, she shares that power, so she isn't cut off anymore, because she talks about that as the Slayer. She's always cut off, and this is what the entire season deals with. There's a smaller foreshadowing where she says there's no mystical guidebook, no all-knowing council. The council does still exist at this point, but in this season, and not too long from now, they're all going to be blown up. So there will literally be no council. And I suppose there never was an all-knowing council, since they missed the boat on so many things. A foreshadowing that did not happen, Drew Goddard said they really wanted to bring Hallie back for Conversations with Dead People, which is the episode after this one. She would appear to Anya, but the actress had a conflict and could not come back. And I suppose that might be why we don't see Anya in Conversations with Dead People. And that reminded me that last time I missed a pretty big foreshadowing. I missed that Cassie returns in Conversations with Dead People to haunt Willow. Amber Benson could not come back to play Tara. They were originally thinking that Tara would be the one who appeared to Willow, so instead it's Cassie. And I think that works really well. I'll talk about it more then. In some ways, it's more powerful that Willow does not get to see Tara. And I'm glad that we don't have to see Tara being the first, or the first appearing as Tara. Buffy saying to Spike, "Get up and get out of this basement." I'm not sure I quoted that, but she says that to Spike, and he says, "I don't have anywhere else to go." This foreshadows Conversations with Dead People as well, where Buffy is going to bring Spike to live at Xander's apartment because she wants to get him away from the Hellmouth. She sees it as the Hellmouth doing all this to him. And this will be super problematic because that's the episode where we find out Spike is killing people. That all fits thematically with Drew Goddard's direction that James Marsters should act sane while the first is talking to him, and crazy when real Buffy talks to him. It supports Conversations with Dead People, where we see Spike making a connection with a woman. We find out that he has lured all these people to this house and killed them. It shows that Spike can act very normal, for lack of a better word, when he's under the first influence. And it raises a question of when he went to help Buffy track down the worm demon, was he acting under the first's influence then? Finally, there are these 3 references to Xander seeing. You've always seen what you wanted to, seeing through the eyeballs of love. Maybe not intentional, maybe so, that Xander will lose an eye later in the season. We'll get a much more heavy-handed reference where Dawn is going to say to Xander that's his superpower, that he sees people. Also, I don't think necessarily really supported in the text, but it does seem they want to play this up. That is it for foreshadowing and spoilers. Thank you again for listening. Come back in 2 weeks for Season 7, Episode 6, Him, a rehash of the love spell idea that I felt worked much better in Season 3, but it does include one of my favorite Buffy lines ever. You can find back episodes of Buffy and the Art of Story, as well as the Buffy and the Art of Story books and all my fiction at lisalily.com. To support the podcast, hear extra bonus content, and get each regular episode a few days early, join the Patreon community at patreon.com/Lisa M. Lilly. That's Lisa, M as in Marie, Lilly, for as little as $1 a month. Music for this episode was written and performed by Robert Newcastle. Buffy and the Art of Story is a production of Spiny Woman, LLC. Copyright 2024. All rights reserved.